What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, it is my Mafia the Old Country review. I have finished it and I have a lot to say about the brand new Mafia game, the fourth game in the Mafia series, first one in 9 years. There's a lot of hype around this game, a lot of expectations that are being held back. There's a lot around this game, so I want to get into all that and talk about the entire game, from the gameplay to the story, the setting, all of that we'll get into in this video. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the first thing I want to do before we actually start talking about Mafia the Old Country is give you my background with the series, because there's already 3 games in the series and I want to let you know where I'm coming from with my opinions when I'm talking about Mafia the Old Country. So I have played the definitive editions of both Mafia 1 and 2. I've not played Mafia 3 yet. I do plan on checking it out at some point, but I've not gotten around to it. So my experience with Mafia is with 1 and 2. And when I played those games for the first time, I thought that they both had very good stories. They did the setting very well, both Empire Bay, and the stories were really what drove the game forward. But there wasn't a lot in the gameplay department. The gameplay was just kind of there. There wasn't a lot to do in this open world. You could live in this open world, but there wasn't a lot to do in those open worlds. And those games were more linear, Mafia 1 and 2. Mafia 3 is the one that kind of took it into that more open world. There's side content. There's a lot to do. Whether you like that or not, I'm not sure how that ended up. I've heard very mixed things about Mafia 3. But Mafia 3 took that different turn from the first 2 games, and with Old Country they decided they wanted to go back to that linear style of Mafia game. I really enjoyed Mafia 1 and 2. I don't think that they're like 10 out of 10 masterpieces or anything like that, but the stories of those games and the characters I thought were really good, and I'm always a sucker for a Mafia style game. Godfather, Goodfellas, stuff like that. The Mob, all that's really cool to me, and when it's done very well, it hits very hard. At least to me, I think it's a really cool idea, and when it's done well, concept, and executed well, it's a really good time. It always makes for a good story. So Mafia 1 and 2, I enjoyed the story a lot. When I played them, was looking for more to do in the open world, but that was before I had any understanding of the Mafia franchise. So now with hindsight, not having that stuff to do in the open world is fine, because I come to Mafia for a great story and good enough gameplay. So that's what my expectations were coming in to the Old Country. I wanted a great story with a great setting and good enough gameplay to get me through the 10 to 12 hour campaign, however long they said it was going to be. That's what I expected coming into Mafia the Old Country. So now we'll start talking about Mafia the Old Country, and the first thing I want to dive into is the gameplay, because that is the part of the game that I feel like a lot of people are very 50-50 on. I think just talking about the game as a whole, you will like this game or not like it depending on what your expectations were coming in. That I think is very important, especially with Mafia the Old Country, because it is not this 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Everything is fluid and smooth and innovative, and there's so many new things, and it does all the old things we know very, very well. It is a game that is going to give you a great story and good enough gameplay. If you come in expecting that, then I think you're going to have a great time with it. But if you come in expecting top of the line gameplay, best in the industry gameplay, then you'll be disappointed. I think that is how it is with Mafia. So it just depends on your expectations coming in. But let's talk about the gameplay and talk about what you'll be doing in Mafia. So it is a third-person shooter. There are cover-based mechanics, and just as a whole, I think the gameplay is solid. That's what I wanted, and that's what I got. I didn't think the gameplay was bad. I thought the shooting actually felt pretty good, and guns felt good, and there were a good enough amount of weapons and weapon variety to mess with. There's actually a lot more weapon variety and vehicle variety and a lot more to do than I thought there would be in this linear style game. so that was a surprise. But just talking about gameplay, it is just a cover-based third-person shooter. You move from cover to cover. I will say that the AI is not all that great. Sometimes they just, they're in cover, then they just start pushing towards you aimlessly, and they're easy to kill. I thought the AI, they weren't fun to fight. I mean, you were just fighting gang members, nothing crazy. You would really not get into any crazy encounters with different enemies. It was usually you're fighting the same enemy, you're fighting them the same way. Nothing crazy there, but like I said, it got the job done. I did enjoy it. Like I said, the shooting felt good to me. The guns felt good, but the gameplay is just, it's solid. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it doesn't do anything great. They're also going to get into knife fights. This is something that I thought I was very 50-50 on throughout the entire game, where I think for the story and for the setting, these one-on-one knife fight duels are a way for two people to be like, let's man up, let's fight, throw the guns away. This is a fight to the death with a knife, and whoever is better with a knife is going to come out on top and survive. I thought from that perspective the knife fights are really cool. Gameplay wise, there was a lot more to the knife fights than I thought there would be, but at the same time, they do get a little repetitive. You do have a dodge, a parry, and then like a block break attack, and then a heavy and light attack. So it's, you know, pretty basic melee combat systems. Not something I expected in a Mafia game, but it's not like it's anything crazy. It's pretty basic. I think the concept is cool when it comes to the story, but it does get a little repetitive. I think it's only done well when it happens you're fighting someone that is worth having a knife fight. There were one or two times where a knife fight happens and you're just fighting really like a nobody. You're fighting someone that's just random, doesn't have anything to do with the story. And when those parts popped up and I'm fighting this nameless mob member, gang member, I'm like, why do I need to knife fight this guy? I didn't think that was very interesting at all. But when you're fighting someone that is big in the story, that's where I thought the knife fights were pretty cool. But it's nothing crazy. It did surprise me that they were in the game. I think they're cool in concept. And when it comes to the story, I think that they are welcome to me. I don't think they got super repetitive. They don't happen a whole lot. I think you might get into less than 10 throughout the entire game. I don't think they were too repetitive, but someone else might think differently. But the knife fights were a cool addition. I just wish that one or two of them were taken out just based on who you're fighting. I think the knife fight should have only been used when fighting a big story character, and it was a big story moment in the game. You also have an open world, but not really an open world with Mafia the Old Country. They wanted to go away from the Mafia 3 open world and go back to a Mafia 1 and 2 style linear but open world. I mean, you can drive around. You do get parts in the game where you're supposed to drive to an objective, but if you want to drive around the map, you can, and it's a pretty decent sized map. But I mean, it's empty. There's nothing to do. You can drive around, and we'll talk about setting in a little bit, but it is beautiful to drive around, and the setting is great. I'll just say that. Like I said, we'll get in the setting in a little bit. But I mean, if you're looking for an open world that has a lot of stuff to do, you're not going to get it here. That's not what I expected, so it's not a demerit. But at the same time, with the setting, I do kind of wish that there was something here that might be crazy to say, but just for me, with a setting like Italy, I think it could have been really cool. And there are buildings that if you drive around, I was driving to an objective and I would stop and be like, I wonder if there's anything here at this random building on the side of the road, almost in the middle of the woods. And there would be people there, NPCs, but nothing would really be going on. So I wonder if they thought about it at first, but then took it away, held back, and just went with that linear style. I think what we got is good, but it's just the potential of maybe something a little bit more, maybe not like Mafia 3 from what I've heard about that game, but just the potential of just a little bit of something that's there, at least for me. But what we got is solid enough. You do have a decent bit of customization as well in the Old Country. When it comes to, there's a decent amount of guns. Like I said, you can go to a store that has something to do with one of the characters in the story and buy just certain weapons to equip. You have charms that give you gameplay bonuses, different horse saddles and car customization. There's a good amount of cars in this game too. I think it's kind of interesting how much there is for how much you really get to use it, especially with the cars and stuff like that. If you're looking to 100% and get everything, there's stuff there for you that might take you some time to get. But just for a one-time story playthrough, there was a lot there for what I felt like, you know, you didn't really get to use like a car that much to be able to use different cars and use different customizations. Same thing with the horses and stuff like that. The customization is there, and there's a good bit of it, a lot more than I thought there'd be. But just kind of felt weird with how the game was structured, at least to me. So the open world, not really an open world, it's there, but like I said, expectations coming in, didn't really want that or expect that, so it's fine with me. Gameplay is solid, it gets the job done, nothing crazy there. That's what I expected, and that's what I got. There's a lot more here than I thought, which is a good thing. It also isn't utilized all the way, I feel like. So the gameplay is solid. Some parts of it are better than others. There's a lot going on, a lot more than I thought going on with the gameplay in the Old Country. And I enjoyed it. I had a decent time with it, and it's not the main selling point in the game. We'll get to the better parts of the game right now. The setting is one thing that hooked me right away when we first saw the Old Country. Italy is my dream vacation spot. I would love to one day go to Italy. The culture, the architecture, the views, the food, all of Italy, I would just love to experience it one day. And having a Mafia game set in that setting, I knew I was going to like that part of the game, and they always kill it with the setting, at least in Mafia 1 and 2. Like I said, I haven't played 3, but I've heard good things about the setting in all 3 games. They usually are able to nail being able to live in a breathing world. Mafia 1 did it, Mafia 2 did it, and I think the Old Country does it as well with the setting. The buildings that you go around to when you get into the main city, the people walking around talking, and the mannerisms that they talk with, and stuff that I had to look up to learn what they meant and stuff like that. They really knocked it out of the park with the setting. I thought they killed it. I love how the characters talk, the dialect that they have, and there's not a lot that I can say about the setting, but I did just want to mention it because I think it is a great part of the game. I knew it was going to be good. They always kill it with the setting, and having a Mafia game set in Italy just felt like a dream come true. When you have the first 2 games set in America, now we'll move to a different country. We will talk about the Italians and how the mob is working in the Old Country. Also, this being a prequel, it does line up things story-wise, which we'll talk about later, with the games. You do see some returning characters, which is pretty cool. But overall, like I said, not a lot to say about the setting, but I did enjoy it. I thought that the world was great to be in, with great characters and dialect and setting, buildings, architecture, the views, just the countryside when you drive by, or if you're on horse, you're galloping by. Setting, great in this game. Before I keep going on about the great parts about this game, there is one part of the game that I did have some issues with, and that was the performance and visuals. I don't usually talk about that in my videos, my reviews, just because if I don't have a problem with it, I'm not going to mention it. But I did have issues with it in Mafia the Old Country, and it feels like performance is kind of subjective, but at the same time, if a game is not well optimized, a lot of people are going to have problems with it. And from what I saw, there were a lot of people having problems with the performance. I did play on PC. Consoles might be a different story, but I played on PC. I played through Steam, and I don't have like the craziest PC or anything like that, but I would get on average probably about 80 to 90 frames. I was playing on a mix between high and medium settings. I was trying to find that sweet spot to not get those frame drops. But when you got to the busier parts of the game, like the main city, or if you were in a car, in a mission, or in a horse, and there's a lot of things going on, you would see pretty big frame drops down to like 40 to 50 frames, which it wasn't unplayable. Obviously, I finished the game, so I don't think it was unplayable. It wasn't anything like overly offensive, but it did get annoying at some points. You know, you really don't want frame drops in a game. You just want it to be smooth the whole way through, and that was not my experience with the performance in Mafia. Also, I had problems with cutscenes. When you would go from gameplay to cutscene, there would be a big frame drop until it got into the cutscene. Same thing when it came to cutscene into gameplay, the same thing. That transition was never smooth. The cinematography was smooth, but the frame rate would always drop when going from one to the other. Every time, I think probably 95% of the time. Sometimes it would do it smooth, but 95% of the time it would always have a bad frame drop. And the visuals also were one thing that I was very up and down about. There are some parts of this game that are beautiful. Like I said, the setting is beautiful, and at some points it does look beautiful, but I had a lot of pop-ins throughout the game. Nothing bad, just little pop-ins that you could see when you were moving around. I'm not a performance and frame rate snob or anything like that. I really don't care at the end of the day about it looking 10 out of 10 beautiful or running 10 out of 10 great. It wasn't offensive, the pop-ins and stuff like that, but it was noticeable, and that does bring down the experience just a little bit when you're trying to be immersed in this world. Pop-ins are happening a good bit. Parts of the game look great, other parts really don't hold up. Some of the character models sometimes don't look all that great. Sometimes they do. It's a really bizarre 50-50 mix that I don't think that I've seen, at least in a minute when I've played a game, of a game that looks great but also at the same time doesn't. So the visuals, I think, are great but also not great. Performance was the part of the game that I had the most trouble with, the most problems with. It wasn't smooth the entire way through. Frame drops happened on a decent basis. Cutscene to gameplay transitions were always dropping frames. And just let me know if you guys had problems with the frame rate and performance in the Old Country. Maybe it's just a me problem. I did see a lot of people talking about how the performance wasn't great for them, so it might be a person-to-person thing, but I did want to bring it up. This could be fixed in patches, so I'm not too worried about it, but at the same time, you do wish that these things were ironed out when the game came out. But the performance is the part of the game that I had the most issues with, and visuals, like I said, up and down the entire time. Parts look beautiful, other parts didn't. So this is the part of the game that I had the most issues with, and part of the game that I did not like compared to the others. The part of the game that I liked the most, and a part of games that I don't really talk about a whole lot, and maybe I should a lot more, but in this game it stood out so much, was the voice acting and cinematography in Mafia the Old Country. The performances, the voice actors, they all killed it in their roles. Everybody that had a role delivered 10 out of 10 when it comes to accents and dialect and just energy and feel in their performances. Everybody seemed like they cared and they gave it all they had. Some of the moments in this game, I'm just like, wow, like they absolutely killed it with writing, and who they got to play these roles I think were perfect fits. Everybody did such a great job, and the cinematography as well. Just, it feels like you're watching a movie at some points. There are a lot of cutscenes. It's a pretty decently cutscene heavy game, but I expected that coming in, and that's what I got, and I really enjoyed it. They killed it with the cinematography, and there are a lot of parts of the game that I could just show you that just explain it for me.
What are you doing here, Damiano? Answer me.
Don Torisi, listen Caruso.
I asked you a question.
The boy owes a debt. We tracked him. In the dark, he must have crossed over. We mean no disrespect. We'll take him. Be on our way.
The boy goes nowhere with you. I'm proud of you.
Grazie, Luca.
Could be a long night. When they did this for me, we went through 3 crates.
From start to finish, the voice acting and cinematography are all great. Cutscenes are well made, well directed, and like I said, performances are killer in this game. Characters like Enzo, Cesare, Luca, Don Teresi does such a great job. Isabella, all of the characters. Tino, I could go on and on about all the characters and the performances that were given for them. They just killed it in their roles. So I wanted to mention that really quick. Just, they absolutely killed it with what they were given, and what we got was amazing. Last thing that we'll talk about is the story, and what I'll say right before we get deep into the story, and what I'll say up front is that this is one of the best stories that I've played in a game this year. That might be a crazy hot take if you play the game or if you've seen other people play it, but for me, they nailed almost all of it. There's one or two hiccups, but those aren't enough to take away from what the whole package was, and I thought the story was fantastic. So just a quick plot premise. You play as Enzo, and this game takes place over 4 or 5 years. You'll see the years change as the game goes on. At first, Enzo is working in the mines, and he ends up finding his way to joining Don Teresi's crime family, and you'll see the climb that he has to make to rise and gain trust within the family throughout the game. I think that the character development of Enzo is handled very, very well. From this he's got heart, he's got bravery, but you see him in the mines, he's doing his thing every day, and then once he finally gets out, he finally gets away from the situation that he's in, he's able to take advantage of the new situation that he is given to gain trust and get more power throughout the game. The characters are fantastic. I loved all of the characters, from Enzo to Cesare, Luca, Don Teresi, Isabella, Tino. I could go on and on. Leo. There's a lot of great characters in this game that you're going to get a good amount of time with. This game runs for probably on average about 10 to 12 hours. It took me 13 to 14 hours to finish it all the way through. And it had a very slow start, which I actually appreciated. I didn't expect it to take a couple of hours to really get into the mafia of the game. You see that the game takes its time with taking Enzo and his journey from the mines to building his way up into the family, and you do that. You actually play as Enzo while you are learning the ropes. At first you are an errand boy. You're really just doing everybody's busy work, all the things I don't want to do. You get taken along the ride. You learn a lot of things. As Enzo learns these things and the way that they work in the gang, we learn them too. And as the story progresses, it just gets better and better. I really want to talk story spoilers, but I'm going to hold off on that. There's a lot that I could say about the ending and big plot moments in this game, but all I'll say, just to keep it short and brief, is that the story of Mafia the Old Country is very, very good. It is a great story. It's got emotion in it. There were times where I teared up. A lot of great things in the story. There's one or two hiccups that happen. Like I said, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but those hiccups, at least for me, did not hold back at all from the entire package that we got with the story. I really enjoyed it, and just I think the game does a great job with the values that people hold back in the early 1900s, and especially when you're a part of a mafia crime family. The values that people hold are a lot different than what you might see today. So things that happen in the story, this is not a, start to finish happy story. There are a lot of things that are dark that happen in this game. It is not going to hold your hand the entire way through and give you a straightforward mafia, good and bad things happen. You would probably expect that, but I think that where it went surprised me with the things that they went after, story beats they went after, and I think the way that they handled the different characters and the values that they hold were really interesting to me, and that caused me to have to sit and think for a second about maybe how I would handle it if I was in that situation and stuff like that. The different families that you will come across and rivalries that you will begin and characters that you'll hate. They do a great job with the villains in this game, I think. And I could go on and on. I really want to get into spoilers. If you guys want to see maybe a quick video talking about the story as a whole, getting into spoilers, maybe like a spoiler talk, Mafia the Old Country video, I would gladly do that. There's a lot that I want to say and get into when it comes to the entirety of the Mafia the Old Country story. But what I'll say to end it off is that Mafia the Old Country has a great story that I think is worth the 10 to 12 hours that it's going to take you to finish it. What I expected out of Mafia the Old Country is what I got, and I was very happy with it. So what is the verdict for Mafia the Old Country? I will say the game is priced at $50. It came out August 8th. It's been out for about a week as of recording this video. And like I said, if your expectations coming in to Mafia the Old Country were you want a great story with good enough gameplay to get you through the 10 to 12 hour experience all around, then I would recommend the $50 price tag. If you are worried about performance, I would either wait maybe a month or two. Hopefully they get some things ironed out and maybe it'll be better with a $50 purchase, or I would say a $40 purchase will be justified if you're going in with those expectations. If you are going in expecting a 20 to 30 hour open world experience with tons of side content and really good gameplay and driving and stuff like that, then I would steer clear of Mafia the Old Country. It is not going to be the game for you. If you have the right expectations going into it, I would definitely recommend getting it for the $50 price tag. And if you're worried about performance or just want to get it a little bit cheaper, maybe in a month or two it'll be down to like $40, and I would absolutely recommend getting it. I think it is one of the best stories that I have experienced in a game this year, with great characters and voice acting and cinematography and the setting. The performance and visuals hold the game back, but if those can get ironed out and fixed at least somewhat to make it a little bit better, I think that this is an experience worth getting if you have the right expectations. So that is going to do it for the video. Thank you guys for watching, hanging out and talking about Mafia the Old Country. Let me know what you guys thought about the game down in the comments. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you in between? Tell me all the things that you felt and thought about Mafia the Old Country going in. Let's have a discussion down in the comments about the game. So that'll do it. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more videos coming in the future, and I'll talk to you later.